Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast. And each week we have a different guest from the Boston, UK, in Lincolnshire area. And each week we ask our guests the same questions. And so those questions are for each guest to share their opinion on the most amazing person, object, animal, quote, book, and finally their opinion on the most amazing thing ever. So, and this week's guest is Lorraine Lenton. And Lorraine has been for a long time involved in the community. She used to work at the LCVS, and I had to try and remember what that meant, which was Lincolnshire Community Volunteer Service, where and since retiring, she's kept herself busy with volunteering roles. I think she was probably still doing those volunteering roles whilst at the LCVS. So Lorraine volunteers for the Samaritans and has done so for quite a few years. I think it's in the 20s, maybe nearly 30 years. I'm not sure which one. And in that time held a variety of roles, including the branch director, which is the person who runs the branch for a 3-year period. And I think Lorraine's done that on a couple of occasions, and is currently responsible for training the existing Samaritans and the new Samaritans. Lorraine is also now the chair at Butterfly Hospice. And if I remember right, you were also quite influential in helping it get started and set up as well.
Yes, the person that was one of the instigators in setting it up used to contact me when I was at the LCVS if she had a volunteer problem, and that's how I first got involved with
so you got involved that way. Yeah. And you're also a member of the U3A, which is, if I remember right, University of the Third Age, and you're part of the folding group. And if I remember rightly, you got a meeting this afternoon.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. So that's this week's guest is Lorraine Lenton. As we can see, she keeps herself very busy in the community. So let's crack on. So Lorraine, your opinion on the most amazing person, and I'm going to guess that not many people have heard of this person.
No, and I apologise, Mark, because
no, that's good because it's a learning one.
But it's my eldest son lives in Australia, in Queensland, and on one of my regular visits, and it was a long time ago because the boys were still at school, we went over for a week's holiday to Stradbroke Island, just off the coast of Brisbane. And it's a beautiful place, but it also has a fascinating history. And this person, Kath Walker, was actually born there. She is an Indigenous person. Her mother had an Aborigine background, but her father, I believe, was Scottish. But she considers herself as an Aborigine, and she considers Stradbroke as her home, or she did. She actually died a little while ago. But the museum on the island is absolutely fascinating, and there was a lot in there about Kath and what she'd actually done. She actually changed her name to the Aborigine name of Ujiru Nonakol because it was in protest, really, against the ignorance of people with regard to the Indigenous people. And she joined quite a few political parties in her lifetime, but got disillusioned with all of them. I think you'll probably resonate with that, Mark. And so she sort of branched out on her own. She actually has a very high profile reputation in Australia, Queensland in particular, as a literary person. She did write a lot, and she has poetry that's been published and so on. And I think the first Indigenous person to actually have a publication out there. So, but she used her pen to actually gain rights for the Indigenous people of Australia. And I think it was only in the 60s that she actually managed to persuade government that they should be included in the census. And they'd never actually been included before. And so that was a real sort of bonus for her, that actually she was able to achieve that. And she went on to continue to fight for their rights And I think it was in the 70s she sort of retired from being a political activist and set up a school on Stradbroke Island. And Stradbroke Island is actually the original, and if I get this right, I don't think anybody will question me actually, that this is, and I think it's Minjerribah is the Aborigine name for the island. And she retired there and set up a school, and people would go, and basically it was about the history and so on of the indigenous peoples. But the thing that she did on Stradbroke was something that really resonated with me, and I think probably that's because of my involvement with the Samaritans as well. There was a sort of a health centre there, and people were sent to sort of have treatment but also to recover and so on. So they used to go over from the mainland. But when you dug a little bit deeper, and I think it's been whitewashed a bit in history, they also used to use this as a place to deposit indigenous people that were considered to be a problem or had mental health issues. And it was a place that was run with all the best of intentions, but it wasn't quite as good as it could have been. And she actually fought really hard to turn that around, so people were treated a lot better while they were there, and their illnesses were acknowledged appropriately, and they got the appropriate treatment. So that was what drew me to her in the first place. And she's been recognised by lots of universities, doctorates and all the rest of it, but none of that was of interest to her. What she wanted to do was what she achieved, and that was get rights for the people that were her family, really. And she retired back to Stradbroke and ended her life ended there. She died there, but so yeah, and she just, for me, she sort of reinforces that one person can make a difference, although she joined these political parties and groups and so on throughout her life, different parties with different ideals, but none of them actually did or were in tune with what she wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
So setting out on her own, and yes, you take people with you, but it just takes that one person to start making a difference.
Yeah.
And she reinforced that for me. And if anybody's interested and goes on the website and you see her photograph of her as her older, to me she looks like everybody's grandma. She has a wonderful face as she got older. So yeah, she stuck with me. So that was my amazing person, really.
Yeah.
She's had an interesting life.
Yeah, very much so. I read a bit about her, and funny enough, she made me think of Samaritans as well, only because, so apparently, this is from a wiki page, in 1974, she was on a plane, a British Airways plane that got hijacked. And she wrote, while she was hijacked, she wrote 2 poems on the back of a sick bag. Did you know about this?
Yeah. Yes, reminded me. Yes, I didn't make a note of that. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I could only find one of them, and one of them was called Youssef, which is the hijacker. But like, so, and I read it this morning before, and it was really quite moving, because the first part of the poem is her trying to is sort of empathizing with the hijacker of what must have pushed the hijacker to feel that this was their option to sort this problem out. The end part of it was like, no, you're really annoying me now. I've got my life to live as well. But the first part, the first part was very empathetic, like trying to sort of put herself in the shoes of what made the person hijack the plane and kill someone. And yeah, I thought that's the first I'd heard of it. But when I saw that, I was like, wow, yeah. To try and empathize that level with what put the person in that place.
Yes, and sometimes I think that when you've been a Samaritan for a while as well, my sister always used to say to me, "You're too tolerant," and sometimes you do have a toleration, and she had that. She would tolerate so far, but then she would actually push, and she would get what she wanted. So she was quite forceful in her ability. But I'd forgotten about the poems, and to be honest, I hadn't looked them up, so I hadn't, and now I will.
Well, I couldn't find the other one. The other one's apparently called Commonplace, but the one called Hijacker or Yusuf, Amazing.
So I just think, yes, it was. But if anybody ever is in Queensland or in Brisbane and have a chance to go over to Stradbroke, it's a fascinating island, and as well as its history and her connection with that. Because when she retired, she went back to where she was born, and I can't remember the Aboriginal name for it now, but it means sitting down place. So
Right.
she went back to her sitting down place to actually start this school and start educating youngsters in their history, really. And education was important. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that appealed most about I'm going to try her first name, Udagaru. Is that's
Ujaru, it
Udagaru.
is, and yeah, Nonakal is the name of the group or the tribe that she belonged to.
Right. So
Yeah.
so the thing that appeals most about you is how one person can make a difference.
Yes. Yeah. Because joining all those political parties and getting in and different groups and people, they weren't doing what she felt needed to be done. So she went out on her own. And yes, you take people with you, but if she hadn't have done it herself and actually got people to understand what the needs were, it wouldn't have happened. So she was strong enough to be able to stand up and use her ability to write and the literature and the poems and so on to get people on side to actually be able to make that difference.
Yeah.
And if she hadn't have done it, would there have been anybody else to do it? Don't know. History in that might have been quite different.
And she did it with her words rather than anything else.
Yes, she did.
That is
Yeah.
pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yes, I thought it was worth sort of yes, I thought it was worth talking about because, as I say, she stayed with me, and it was a long time ago because the boys were still at school and they're both working now and earning money, so it must be about, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago when I first went, but she stayed with me, and I've got the picture of her up in my office upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, truly an amazing person, and fighting for the rights and justice and equality.
Yes.
Well, so that's your most amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
This takes us on to our next one, which is your most amazing object.
Yes, well, I suppose it links really in a way because it's the printing press. I mean, being an avid reader, I'm surrounded by books. I think it is it was an amazing event. It started sort of worldwide communication in a way without the print. Yes, they were able to print and produce written work before, but it was all very laborious and you couldn't get the number of copies. So the printing press actually opened up a whole different world to people being able to engage and communicate. And whether that was through books or news or information, it allowed for inventions and all sorts of people's coming together. And I'm not very good at remembering figures, but by the 1500s, the printing presses in operation throughout Western Europe had produced more than 20 million volumes, and in the 16th century, it went further afield and was estimated that 150 to 200 million copies were actually produced. And it wasn't until the 17th century that it actually went over to America. And that was because America had an increased demand in Bible and other religious literature. So that the printing press going over to America enabled them to spread the word. So it just opened up the world to all sorts of information and different cultures, and it was just amazing. And I don't use a Kindle now. I have books. I get criticised because I don't have a Kindle, and I should have a Kindle, but I'm sorry, I like to hold a book. So to me, the printing press, and I know the internet has sort of taken over to an extent, and you have more difficulty getting a printed newspaper now. Probably you're expected to go online and so on.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't been for the printing press, we probably wouldn't have the internet. So
no, because it really did democratize the information, didn't it? It made it available for the masses.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I know the press doesn't always have a positive reputation, and sometimes it can be a bit naughty in what it produces and what it spreads in terms of gossip, etc. But there's always a basis of truth in there, so people need to understand, and it allows people to make up their own minds as well. If they can read or understand something that's happening, it might sort of open up a whole different world to people and perhaps even change their lives. You don't know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it shared a universal message that perhaps wasn't that quick or easy. It made it quicker to get a universal message out to everyone as well, just by the printing press.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, without all those words written down and sent out, maybe we wouldn't have had the internet. But
no. So it's opened up the world to all sorts of things. And I know you've travelled a bit, and wherever you go in the world, there's always an English newspaper.
Yeah.
And whether that's true now with the internet, I'm not sure, but it was, so it's it's just an interesting, I think it's an interesting development and what it's led to. And I am a bit of a Luddite, but I do, when it comes to technology and stuff, I'm not very good. But the printing press is something that's really, I think, wow, that was great.
It's amazing. I mix between my Kindle and my book, and I can't remember which book it was, but about 6 months ago, I was reading a book, a physical book, and I touched the word and held it to try and find out what the meaning was, and then I was like, you idiot.
Another book that's called a dictionary, and look it up.
That's what it was. But the moment I touched it, I had to close my eyes and go, you plonker. And now I'll just share it with everyone. But it just get the message. And I'd imagine religion drove the printing press to take off, especially in America.
Yes, I mean, yes, and actually, when you think about the work, like the Book of Kells, for instance, because that was going to be on my list for my most amazing book, but it's not the one now. But I've seen that in Dublin, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. But the fact that people had to do that by hand, and spent all that time in the text and the colours and everything, and now you could actually just run that off. And you know what I mean, with the printing press it would be so easy, and now with the internet you could just download it probably or something. It's probably copyrighted, but it's not. So yes, but it did open up a whole new world and allowed people to have more time, I guess, to do other things as well.
And now on Amazon, like the books that I've got on Amazon, which are print on demand, so if someone orders it, Amazon will print the book and send it out.
Yes, of course.
There's no stock of the book, but that wouldn't have got there without was it Gutenberg who invented
and there were others after him that actually sort of improved it, but he was the main the first one to actually make it a mechanical process. So yes, it was.
I was just trying to think of what the world would have been like before the press, sort of like in the 1400s. Like it's quite hard to comprehend, isn't it? Because there'd be no newspapers, there would be no shared written information.
You'd know nothing about what was going on in the rest of the world. I mean, look at the reporters from the wars, all wars, not just the World War I and II, but all wars. What would we do without? We wouldn't know anything that was going on without them being able to report and it being printed in the papers. So it was So now, of course, it's all on the internet, and there's people out there with cameras and stuff, and you can see it for real. Which, whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know, because it's a bit daunting that people are actually willing to go out and report on it. But originally, we wouldn't have known anything if those journalists were not willing to go out and actually report back what was happening.
And then they had that method of the print press to be able to share, to print it quickly and disseminate it around the world and the country.
I mean, when you see how the printing press evolved, when you can see them, I mean, you can go on to YouTube, can't you, and see how they printed the newspapers and so on with those huge machines and just coming out in reams and reams of paper. It was just absolutely amazing. So even the development of the printing press, you know, sort of through to a more modern age was incredible. So it led to all sorts of other things.
Yeah, and I suppose the more available it is material to read, the more that people need to read as well. So I'd imagine the printing press changed and probably encouraged a lot of people who might not have read before to read. To read now. So
well, yes, education would have changed, and you know, it gave people opportunity to read and learn, and not just the sort of the literature, but the factual stuff as well as the novels and people's inventions. But it was so yes, it opened up a whole new world of education as well as anything else.
Yeah.
So,
the more you think about it, the more it makes makes it different, isn't it? And I suppose it made sharing ideas around the world just so much, like concepts and philosophies and everything, just so much quicker as well. But like, and it's even quicker now with the internet. But without that.
Well, if we think how quickly we access stuff now, it would have been the same sort of reaction then with the printed word and the written word, wouldn't it? As we have with getting stuff on the internet. It's just so amazing.
No, it's very.
Yeah, that was me pinging. I'm sorry.
No, that's,
I'll take that off.
Mine did as well. So it's a little bit like that now, actually, because I read. I don't get a newspaper. I tend to get my news from online. But my mum would tell me some news, but it's normally a day or two later than when I saw it, and I thought, oh yeah, I heard about that, but it's like way gone because I'm already on like 2 days ahead. It's quite interesting. It must have been like that when the print press came out. It was like, apart from but extended, I guess, because. Like, oh, I didn't hear about that.
So I think it's amazing how it's opened up the ability to learn and to find out about lots of things that people probably didn't know they wanted to know.
No,
and so on, and sort of way of life and what's happening you know, in the rest of the world, and how does it impact on us, and how would it have affected us and stuff, you know? So everybody will then have an opinion.
Yes. Stuff I didn't know I needed an opinion on because I've read something. I was like,
that's right.
Okay. Right. Okay. So your most amazing object is the printing press. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the printing press before we?
No, I don't think so. I think that's we've covered that. As I say, there's lots of dates and numbers and stuff, but it's the actual physical thing that was important, really, I think. And amazing.
That is, well, I think we've really described how it changed things. So let's go for your most amazing animal.
Well, my most amazing animal is the elephant. And I fell in love with elephants. My sister and I did a bit of traveling, and we went over to Botswana and on safari, and we had a guide who took us on a dirt track. We had no idea where we were going, but we went on this dirt track in this Jeep, and suddenly we realized that off the dirt track there was a herd of elephants were walking just a few yards away from us, and we were very slowly following this herd of elephants and what's going on, and they suddenly then the driver stopped, and we waited, and these elephants were crossing the road to go to their water hole. And it was absolutely amazing because they're very matriarchal. The mums and aunts and that bring up the young ones, even the young males, until they're ready to go off on their own. Okay, so very family orientated, and it's all learnt from mum. Right. So the older elephant, she was at the front of this herd, and she stopped and trumpeted, and then this young male came, and he was tasked with going over the road to make sure it was safe for the rest of the herd to follow. And it was just amazing, and he did exactly that, and he paced up and down, and he walked off, and he went, and then he came back and trumpeted, and it was fine for them to go. And then as they were wanting to go, there was a bit of a lip on the road, and there was a baby, and this baby was like, it was like jelly. It was really, really amazing. He was trying to get down this step, and I just wanted to go and pick it up and take it, but Mum was there, and she was just nudging it just very gently to go down, and it kept looking up at her and thinking, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then eventually it went down, and it trotted across with Mum, and the rest of the herd followed and went down to the waterhole. And that made me actually think about the elephants. And we saw lots of evidence of how they support each other. They even have their own burial grounds. So when they are at the end of their life, they go off to their place to die. And but they are so community orientated and there for each other, and they protect each other, and they look after each other, and it's just amazing. And even the young males, when they get to a certain age and they're ready to go off and find their own mate and set up, because then they go off and do their own thing. When they start fighting, you know, the matriarch, they actually interfere. It's almost like I've got two sons, so it's a bit like, you know, pulling them apart when they were younger. So yeah, so it was just absolutely fascinating to see how they worked together and actually were teaching the young ones how to look after each other, to be part of a community. And it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And I couldn't get over how fantastic it was that these huge animals can actually be so gentle as well. Yes.
It's just amazing.
Yes.
Because they are so huge, aren't they? They are so huge. We think of dinosaurs, but I'd imagine, you know, I'm not the Tyrannosaurus, but some of the smaller, like Velociraptors, I'd imagine the elephants is bigger than them.
Yes. And they had the hairy mammals. I can't remember what they were called. They were the mammoths. That's right. Yes, they were probably bigger than the elephants that were now, but they certainly. I mean, the elephants are huge. I mean, akin to the whales are being the biggest in the sea. So I think the elephants must be the biggest animal on Earth. So it's
That's a good point about the dinosaurs and the mammoths, isn't it? Because it must be part of the same evolution tree.
Yes.
As I was reading online about elephants' ears. Apparently, the African elephants, their ears are naturally generally like the shape of Africa. Okay. I didn't notice that. The Asian ones have got slightly smaller, rounder ears, but the African elephants' ears, just by some coincidence, are in the same shape as Africa. And I quite like that.
So no, that's so it was just amazing, really, how they actually supported each other. And then of course you'll see the males out in the wild, and you'll see two bulls actually fighting over a female, and the female's just standing there waiting to see who's won. I'll be stuck with that one then.
It may be obvious, but how do elephants fight? Do they whip with their
they use their tusks and their tusks. So it's headbutting and their tusks, because obviously their tusks are quite dangerous and can do a lot of damage. So yes, so they fight, but you don't want to get too close. You don't want to get in the way.
And is it only males that have tusks, or I don't know, or can the female ones?
I think it's the males have the the tusks. Do you know, Mark? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. Well, if anyone wants to know, they can do what we're going to do and Google afterwards.
Yes, I don't think the females do, because when I've seen the female try to again get a baby out of a mud hole, and I'm not aware of the tusks, but the trunk sort of got underneath this little one and actually right down in the mud, and just sort of like lifted it up with a bit of support from one of the aunts to sort of get it out of this thing. And I mean, other animals, they're not always as supportive of each other. They might look after their own babies, but they're not necessarily a community in the same way that perhaps elephants are. They all sort of look in and support each other.
I wonder, as a community, I wonder if they have a sense of fun. I wonder if they do spray each other with water or play games. I don't.
Well, yes, we did see some evidence of that as well, because there was it wasn't a watering hole exactly. It was a bit like a small. it was a brick built or stone built sort of well, but it wasn't deep, but it had a lot of water in it. And there was an elephant and a young elephant and an older elephant, and they were both at this watering hole, and they started spraying each other. So I think they do have a sense of fun as well, and would play games. So yes, and you can imagine the little ones being quite naughty.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they have a sense of fun as well as a sense of responsibility.
Yeah. I remember like there's I was trying to work out whether elephants never forget, and they said they do obviously forget things like us, but they said they got really good memories. They can it isn't a myth that elephants. Yeah, they've got very good
Yes.
memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I read another article. It was more about the power of the mind, but it was taught from the concept of an elephant. The fact that an elephant doesn't forget. They said that when they catch young elephants, and I don't like the idea of it to sort of and tie them up so that humans can own them. They tie them with a rope that stops the baby elephant. The baby elephant isn't strong enough to break it.
Right.
So it will try and break the rope and then can't do it. But when it's a big elephant, they will, and a fully grown one, they tie it with the same rope, and the elephant could break the rope like that, but it doesn't try again. It tried when it was younger, and it remembers that it can't break that rope. But if it tried, it could do it, but it doesn't. It's tried. It had its attempt, and then it can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh right. Oh, that's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah. When I was in Thailand, I saw people, they were offering rides on elephants, and I was like, no, I just want to see them in the wild. I don't want to see them.
Yeah, no, well, that was, because when we went to India, we had a ride on an elephant, and getting up onto the, what they call it, how does on the back of the elephant, the big seat things, getting onto that was amazing. And yes, but they were trained to actually, for people to enjoy that way. So seeing the quite different.
Yeah, I went on the back of an elephant in India without thinking about it. But like, it's like every animal, isn't it? It's much better to see it in its natural habitat rather than the zoo or to have a ride. But if it was that or them being dead and they're saved and it's a sanctuary, well, that's a little bit.
Well, yes, yeah, and there was
not always that black and white.
No, it isn't. No, yeah. We did meet a couple in Botswana who had actually rescued two baby elephants, and they'd still got them as adults. And I've got a photograph of my sister and I. We were sat down and they'd served us tea outside, and they'd served us tea, and all of a sudden this elephant's face appears between us, and they managed to take a photograph, and it absolutely frightened us to death. But they were so tame, they were so and it was so gentle. It was just amazing. But but they'd rescued them, but they didn't tie them down. They were left to roam, but they did come back. So so the memory thing. They remembered who their saviors were, I guess, and actually were friendly with them. So that was interesting. But I just liked the way that they would never leave each other in distress, or they would always be there to support and look after.
A caring
community.
Yeah.
And from training there, and I suppose it's a as I say, having two sons, I suppose as the mum, you're all very protective anyway, aren't you? And would do what you would need to do. But it just seemed in the wild, you didn't expect it quite the same.
No.
If you see the lions, the lion get the cubs are born, and mum's there to look after the cubs and stuff, and the lion just goes off and does his own thing. So you just sort of think, where is the female lions there with all the responsibility? But
so
not
to
quite
the
elephant.
elephant.
An elephant, but the males go off with the elephants as well. But the male lion doesn't even bother to feed its offspring. So yeah.
But with the elephants, there's still a sense of family with the father's still around doing it.
Yeah.
But it's mainly the mother that does the caring.
Yeah. So, but it's the mums that take the lead.
Yeah.
So,
I saw a video online of a baby elephant upside down in a ditch, and the mum elephant couldn't turn the baby elephant up the right way, and some I don't know who they were, but they came along with a digger to try and tip the baby elephant back up, but they needed somebody else to try and keep the mum elephant away so that they knew that
Yes. Oh, right. Yeah, but
and
that was hard.
it was a massive operation, but they managed
Yeah.
to, and they got the baby on its foot, and then they all pulled away and it all went off quite happily. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, it was quite a nice little video. I'm sure it's on YouTube. See,
Yeah.
baby baby elephant upside down in a ditch. I'm sure you'll find it. So
Yes,
yeah,
I'm sure that will come
yeah,
up. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are yeah,
Mm.
quite amazing animals. Anything else you'd like
Yeah.
to say about
No,
elephants?
I don't think so. I think we've yeah, exhausted elephants, but I do
Yeah,
love
but
them.
yeah, but I after talking to you, I now want to go to Botswana or somewhere in Africa and
Yeah.
see elephants as
Well, what made me want to go to Botswana was I've read Alexander McCall Smith's the #1 detective, ladies detective agency.
Ah,
And in the first book, it's because he was in Botswana for quite a long time, and in the first book, she's in the capital Gaborone, but they have to clear or wait for the animals to clear off the runway before the plane can land, and it really intrigued me. And when my sister and I decided we wanted to sort of do some travelling, I said I'd love to go. So that's what we did. So that's why we went over to Botswana, and they do have to wait for the animals to clear the airway, the runway, before the two-seater Cessnas can actually land.
right. Okay. So is it animals like elephants as well, or just animals in general?
Elephants, zebras, giraffes, and because when they fly you out to the camps, they have their own sort of airstrip.
Right.
So
Okay.
they have to make sure that the animals are off before they can land.
Okay. And this is a little bit crude, I know, but like, do they have to clear like any poo that the animal's done from the runway as well,
Well,
or
I don't
just
know.
the animal?
Nobody goes out with a brush,
No one
just
goes
the
out with
animals.
a brush, because that could yeah. I'm just it's not the most solid of landings, is it?
But yeah, but it tends sometimes they tend to be like the animals sort of walk way to somewhere else, so they
Right.
just have to
Okay.
make sure that they cross and that they're
Wow. I like
gone
that.
before they land.
Yeah. That's very cool, isn't
Yeah,
it? I like that idea.
yeah,
Yeah, just imagine landing and you can see an elephant just making a run for
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
crazy.
scary.
Right. Perfect. So the most amazing
Hey,
animal is an elephant. So before we go on to the most amazing quote, we're going to just have a quick break where we're going to have a look at the most amazing poll of the week, the most amazing quote of the week, the most amazing fact of the week, and the most amazing story of the week. And then we will
okay.
be right back. r-amazing.com website, where we find the amazing in the ordinary everyday. And we're going to have a look at the most amazing poll, fact, quote, and story of the week. So the most amazing story of the week, poll, sorry, of the week, is these urban designs. And they're really clever. They've been like having the glow-in-the-dark cycle path so you can see where you're going. These benches where you turn the handle so it's not wet. If the bench is wet, you can turn the handle and have a dry bench. An urban design, the map is on the drain cover. You can move this bench into the shade, and if you like these urban signs, you click the heart for like and the X for dislike. And like this one where it protects the saddle so doesn't get wet. So that's a good idea. So yeah, you can visit and vote that. The fact of the week is, this is a very interesting one, and it is discussed more in the book Plants Are Amazing, but scientists find plants produce alarm sounds when they're cut. So in some ways a plant will scream. Yeah, so you can, if you want to get the Plants Are Amazing book, you can read more about that in there. Right, the quote of the week is a Gandhi quote. And again, Gandhi is right at the bottom of the quote I'm looking for. It's right at the bottom, 12. It says, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." And this one blows my mind, because if you want the world to be a kinder place, if we start with ourselves and become kinder, the world and everything in it by default is a tiny, tiny little bit kinder. And I like that philosophy. So if you like that, click like. Yeah. And now that takes us to our final one, which is the story of the week, which is this lovely one about a buffalo saving a tortoise that's stuck upside down. So if you they're all
My God!
the buffaloes that that was a great reaction from everybody there. Yeah, so this is the website r-amazing.com, and like I said, don't forget to check out the books, plants, odd sports, sharks, bees, pigs or horses are amazing, and the other podcasts can also be found on the website. So that's it for this week, and let's now go back to the podcast. And we're back. Already, we're back. So this takes us on to Lorraine's most amazing quote.
Well, nothing sort of philosophical really or mind-bending, but it's a quote from Bill Gates. And I know people there's a lot of mixed feeling about Bill Gates, some of it very positive, some of it very negative. But one of his quotes is, "Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning." And I've always sort of thought very, very similar, that, you know, mistakes we make, you should learn from them. And I think that's a bit like what he, you know, his philosophy, in as much that the customer is always right, or you let the customer think they're always right. But when I worked in the voluntary sector, it was amazing how many quite big organisations, as well as small groups, that were quite almost afraid of criticism or people making a complaint. And I used to try and get them to understand that actually it's the way you improve your business. And I know when people make a complaint, excuse me, they can often be quite aggressive and very vocal and perhaps sort of difficult to deal with. But I think we need to sort of take on board what they have to say and talk it through and find out the logic behind it, and whether it is something that actually you need to do to improve your business. And you can't improve what you have to sell or what you have to give if you don't hear what people have to say about it. Whether we all like praise, we all want to be told we're absolutely fantastic and the most wonderful person, and we have the most wonderful, you know, whatever it is we're selling in the world. But sometimes we have to do, excuse me, something different. And that something different can improve considerably what we do and how our business can grow. So I think we do have to learn from what people give us as a criticism, or if they're not happy with what we do and how we're doing it and what we're selling them. So to me, I think that sort of I just think it's something that we all need to sort of take on board. And it's sometimes even about knowing ourselves, because we don't know ourselves very well. Other people often know us better. And it's when I'm training, it's always, we ask for constructive criticism, please. Yeah. So make it constructive and we can learn from it. So I think it's important that we take that on board.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Well, we don't know what we don't know. We never do know what we don't know.
No, we don't. Do you know about Jahari's window?
Oh, what was this? Sorry?
Look up Jahari's window. I learned that when I was being trained myself. And it's what we know about others.
Yeah.
What others know about us that we know about ourselves. But also what others know about us that we don't know about ourselves.
Ooh, yeah.
And that can be quite scary.
Yeah, I bet it can.
Yeah. And it's a bit like, you know, when we're the product, whatever that product is, what we think we know about it, but we don't necessarily know everything about it.
No.
So if somebody can tell us something about it that we didn't know, that we need to change or in some way modify, then we need to listen.
Yeah.
So it's the same principle, really.
And this is a different quote, but it's one of my favorite quotes. Don't matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides. And I suppose that's like, we might see the product from our side and forget to see it from the customer's side, like Bill Gates said there. And sometimes them telling you, go, no, I wasn't looking at it like that. I didn't see it from that angle. So like you said, it's a fantastic learning opportunity.
Yes, I think so. I think it's something that we all need to take on board in some way in terms of what we do and how we do it. It doesn't. We don't always. I mean, we we don't always take criticism well, and we don't always actually act on it when we've got it. But it's something we ought to have in mind, I think.
Yeah, but when I read it and based on what you've just said there, it made me think it's a whole different way of seeing it. It's like someone's here to complain. Like, oh, good, I can learn something. And so like you're almost going out with a different mentality, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because I think if somebody's going to make a complaint and you hit that sort of in an aggressive or assertive way, then it's bound to escalate and actually perhaps not get very far. But if you can be accommodating and sort of, welcoming, I want to hear what you have to say, let's see what we can do. It's a different way of dealing with stuff, I guess, and taking it on board, take the heat out of it before you actually sort of get into fisticuffs.
Yeah. I think that's sometimes the problem, isn't it? Sometimes the message gets lost in all the emotion. Where once you take the emotion out, you go, right, okay, that's the core bit now. That's that's what we can learn from.
We can do this
from this. So the quote is, "Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning."
Yes.
Yeah. The idea is not to create.
You think of your Gates, good or bad, whatever you think of him, good or bad.
Yeah. And we can learn from whatever we think of him.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about that quote?
No, I don't think so. I think that sort of says it all, really.
Yeah, I think you said it's about it allows you to be open and transparent and open for criticism as well.
Yes.
Perfect. So that takes us on to your most amazing book.
Oh yeah, well, yes, and I've got it here. I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Because again, it was one of my
Sapiens.
Yeah, Sapiens, and it's by Yuval Harari, who's an Israeli, I believe. It's the brief history of humankind. And one of my sons recommended it to me, and I thought, oh crikey, what's he into now? But anyway, I did read it, and it just I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was really food for thought. I mean, if I read the back cover to you, it says, "Fire gave us power, farming made us hungry for more, money gave us purpose, and science made us deadly." Something, oh crikey. But reading it, as sapiens, we were sort of as we are now, sapiens were the sort of more intelligent, if you like, of the human race that was evolving at that time. And they managed to achieve ethnic cleansing by getting rid of all the I can never pronounce the word.
Oh, Neanderthals.
Thank you. That's the one.
Yeah.
So ethnic cleansing was nothing new because it had happened all those centuries ago.
Wow.
And part of that, their development, the sapiens' development, was because they had imagination. And so as soon as they realized, like if you take for instance the fire, and they realized what they could do, you could sort of develop that, and actually you can cook on it and you can keep warm, and you're not having to hunt all the time for fur, for skins and all that sort of stuff. So you could do stuff with fire, and that led to then the analogy with the farming, made us hungry for more, because once they realized that what they could pick and eat or pull up and eat, then we can plant this and we can grow it ourselves where we want it to be grown and where we actually need it to be grown, rather than out in the wild and having to go and forage. So they started to actually cultivate, and that led then to trading, to actually money. And so it all evolved, but it was only because their brains had evolved to actually be able to imagine and be forward thinking. And actually, what will the future look like if we do this? How will we be able to do more or be more? And it's just I'd never sort of thought about it. I mean, we all do, or we did in my time at school. You talked about the Bronze Age and all that sort of thing, but we never looked at it that way. It was always about, you know, their weapons and all that sort of thing, and their utensils and how they created stuff, but not actually why they did that, and what made them actually want to evolve and develop different things and different ways of living. And then even sort of with religion, sort of they had their gods, but even that sort of developed in terms of, and so we had the pagan religions through medieval times and all the rest of it. So it was all that sort of evolution was going on at a very, very early age in the development of us and the rest of the world, really. So I just couldn't get over how we'd actually managed to develop and become what we became.
Yeah, and that comes down to like you said, the imagination and I think it said and the language to create and communicate new worlds and possibilities is what it said, and it's our human mind. I think I read somewhere about Neanderthals, and it said that Sapiens got rid of Neanderthals because we were able to cooperate and think, and collaborate on our ideas.
Yes, we have. Yes, we developed communities.
Yeah, we got smaller brains, but we were able to imagine and collaborate, and which changed everything.
Yes, which others didn't, because they were sort of fighting, and it was the survival of the fittest. Whereas that didn't happen with Sapiens. It was actually, well, no, how can we work together and do it for the benefit of all of us rather than just the individual?
Yeah. And it's very interesting, going back to that quote that you said on the back, because like fire gave us power. That changed how we got our nutrients from our food and the way that we cooked the food and softer. And then the farming made us hungry for more. Now, I've been fascinated by this for a little while, because I think I either read a bit of this book that you're talking about, or I read something that was talking about that book, and it said farming moved humankind to the concept of greed. And it says there about hungry for more. It said because what there was this thing that I saw online, and it was there's four groups of wolves in Yellowstone Country Park, but the border of where those wolves go is just sort of fluid like that, but they don't really fight unless it's too much, but it's fluid, you move. But the moment we had agriculture and we planted our food in the ground and we had our animals, like we weren't hunting anymore, we put them in a fence, we had to defend it. We had to defend it, but that created war and ownership in mine and not yours. And then you got, I'll have more animals then. And if I take it from you, I'll have more animals than you. And that was where we got our greed really sort of took over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Because we became very territorial, because and it was sort of like families would work together. Yes, you were in a community and you were there to serve the community, but then as that imagination grew and that foresight actually began to develop, then actually we wanted it for ourselves. So we became very parochial. This is mine and you're not having it. Your crops might grow, but I'm fine. I'll trade you, and then money comes to it. You can buy my crops. I'm not going to give them to you. So it was and it's still going on, and it sort of says about science made us deadly, but I think even, I suppose, the science of agriculture was actually, you know, sort of very territorial. Actually sort of started the rot in a way about being very aware of our own territory.
Now this is something that I must have. I'm wondering if I read this book now, because like the science made us deadly. Like there's almost no animal on this planet that a human cannot kill, which is nuts. Even in their own habitat, a human can work out. Like, it's because of our imagination and being able to create weapons, and there's no good reason or way that we should be able to kill a huge whale in its own natural habitat, or a great white shark, yet we seem to be able to. And it's because of our knowledge, our imagination to create tools. And that's nuts, because we're small, we're tiny. Like, we're not the fastest, we're not the strongest.
No.
It's this, though, isn't it? It's that.
It is, yeah. Yes, and that's why we've evolved the way we are, and that's basis of what you're saying, being able to cooperate in large numbers, and it's the capacity to believe in things existing purely in the imagination. So if you can imagine something, then you can start working towards achieving it.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that we've just pulled up these oats. We now know that we can cook them, and we can with the fire, and these oats are giving us nourishment and the meat and stuff. But if we grow these ourselves, we have a continual supply, and then we learn how to store them, and then we get to, I can't remember the century, is it 17th, 18th, no, later than that, 18th, 19th century, when we have the Corn Laws. So people then were sort of being very protective of and investing in corn and all the rest of it. And you just sort of think, well, yeah, out of those small plots of land that the sapiens started to grow their corn and their food because they learned how to cook it, we've actually developed a legal system and an investment system, So is that where FT started?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's just it's just how it all evolves, because somebody has the imagination.
It is the imagination, isn't it? And you can start to plan and foresight. I thought this a little while ago, because a couple of years ago, the cat got locked in my room, and when I came back in, it scratched at the door to get the to try and get out, and the carpet was up. And the day after, I left my room and I closed the door. But as I closed the door, I noticed the cat was there, and it sort of looked at me, and I thought, oh, I better leave the door open. But I went back to look at the cat, and the cat had gone back to sleep. It's like, but as a human, you'd have gone, no, leave that door open. There would have been a concept of planning and a consideration for the future.
Yeah,
but it didn't seem like it was there with the cat.
No.
And I think I wonder, and that's the thing, like you're saying, about alternatives and possibilities and in our brain. And I always thought about that. It's like, in some ways, I didn't mind. It's like, too many things can happen between now and the time I need to go out that door.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's only because somebody had the imagination that we had the printing press, so you could link it back to where we actually, with all the stuff that has been invented since. And yes, the science has been good in lots of ways, but it has also been very dangerous.
Yeah, and the same with agriculture, isn't it? Agriculture has been good in lots of ways, but also, maybe not quite so good. And I wonder if that's like that with everything as well. You could say, the printing press is good in most ways, but perhaps it's shared bad ideas, just like the internet. It's got good things that can help, but maybe nothing is fundamentally good or bad. It's
no
bit of both.
No, I suppose there's something negative about most things, isn't there? I mean, even about your agriculture and the food that you eat. Isn't there? There's a good side and a negative side. Because one time we're told that we can have I don't know, you can't drink much because it's really bad for you, and then you're told that actually a glass of red wine a day is very good for you. So come on, actually, what am I going to go with? I'll go with a glass of red wine every day because I'm told that that's good for me.
So changing the messages.
It is. It's messages, but it just I had no idea, and I sort of went back to my son when he'd sent me this to read, and I thought, I'm really pleased that he did, because it was a real eye opener to me. It really made you think about where we are now and how we've got where we are. It's a really interesting book.
No, so it's called Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind.
Yes
Like it.
So that was my book.
Brilliant. So that takes us on, Lorraine, to the final one, which is your opinion on the most amazing thing ever.
Well, I think you've had this before, but you can't get away from it, and it's nature. Because nature is always going to be there and she actually has given us so much in medicines. I mean, we get the aspirin from a willow, so and just basic stuff like that. It's just absolutely amazing. And again, I can think of when Teresa and I have been traveling, they've done all this clearing of Angkor in Cambodia, and but nature is taking it back. It's a huge site, and you can't get to all of it because nature is reclaiming it, and however hard they try, it's never ever going to be fully exposed. And it's the same with everything. When I first moved into this house, there was a beautiful weeping beach in the front. The property is rented, so I didn't have a say on it. The landlord wanted it taken down, and I was absolutely furious because it was beautiful. But then in the back here, there was the self-seeded, and I've allowed it to grow, and now it's got so big, I'm a bit concerned if it gets really windy. But it just made me cry. So nature will always find a way. She will always find a way, and we're destroying it ourselves, but she will win in the end, and she will, will suffer actually for it because she'll have to get it back. And how nature claims it back is going to be our undoing, I think, but she will win. And I think nature is absolutely amazing.
There's only one winner in that battle, because when they say we've got to save the planet, I think I might have said this in the other one, but we've got to save the planet. And I'm like, no, we don't. Like, the planet will be perfectly fine, and it will recover. And you've only got to look at when they had the explosion in Russia, and I can't remember the name of the Chernobyl. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were saying humans won't be able to go in this part for years, and for like hundreds of years, and 40 years down the line, nature has pretty much cleaned it a lot more than we ever imagined it could have. And I always think that the planet will be fine. It's whether we can stay here or not is the problem, because of how we're treating it, or what's going on.
Yes, and that's our fault, isn't it? We have to accept that. We can't, so I just think it's we don't really have a say in it. We're doing the damage, but they're even now actually working together to save the Amazon, aren't they? So those countries that are part of that Amazonian region are actually joining forces to actually try and save the Amazon rainforest, so that we don't do any more damage to that. How well they will cooperate is still debatable, but they seem to be making the right noises. Is it too late? Well, no, perhaps it isn't, because nature will escalate.
Yeah, if you allow the environment to get on with it, it's amazing what it does. Sometimes I dog sit for people, and if I walk their dog and I'm walking past a house that's been derelict for a while, I'll always stop and just see how nature's just taking it back. Just like the weeds start coming sort of where the house and the ground meet. It starts coming out of that little gap, and then eventually through the concrete. And the concrete's hard, isn't it? Somehow these weeds manage to come through the tarmac or the concrete, and you're just like, it's just taking it back, isn't it? It's I have to stop and just appreciate how powerful it is. It's soft. It seems like nature is soft, like the weeds and all of those things, but they seem to win over the tarmac and the concrete and the bricks. It always seems to take it back.
Yes, it does. It's doing that at the moment at the gravel out the front of my house. I've got to get down there and get rid of the weeds.
It's crazy. I suppose the other thing is, and I realized I didn't think about this until I was in Israel, and it goes back a little bit to what your book was saying about the sapient, about humankind. I was in Masada in Israel, and I was walking, and it was really, really hot, and I went past this building, and it had a sign on it, and it said it was called the Research Institute for Living Under Extreme Conditions, and it just made me realize, like, I had to stop, because it was like, as humans, we're not really meant to live at the North Pole or the South Pole or the equator. Really, we're sort of designed to live in California or the certain parts of Africa where the temperature's right for us. But humans, wherever we can walk around in shorts and t-shirt all year round, that really is our natural habitat. But because of our brains, again, we've been able to go. We can work out what clothing we need to go and live on the North or South Pole, or to live on the equator as close to the sun, which basically means we're messing like with our rubbish and everything. We're messing up the whole world, not just the bit where we are.
No, it's all of it.
yeah. Like because really, when that's not
Yeah,
places for us, but because
yeah,
of our brains and our imagination,
yes,
we can go to all these places where we're perhaps not meant to
absolutely.
be.
Yes, yeah. And again, so that's remind me, sort of links back to the Australia thing, really, because when my eldest son was first traveling, he was in Australia for quite some time, and he worked on a sheep farm. And there were a lot of Aborigine lads he was working with, and they camped. And he didn't realise, but they camped on a dry riverbed. But actually, one one night they found themselves sort of almost floating away, and he said to these guys, he said, "I thought you could predict this." And when we hit, oh, that's Grandad, that's not us. So
Yeah,
even the youngsters are not actually keeping up with the traditions all the time. And actually, I think we need to sort of instill that into some of our younger ones, that actually there are things that are worth hanging on to.
yeah.
That it's their spiritual thing as well. You know, we shouldn't just sort of dismiss this. I mean, we're a very Christian society, I suppose, but there are other beliefs and other ways of living that are not wrong, and they have their own part to play in what we do to retain what we have.
Yeah,
And that's all part of nature as well.
yeah,
So we need to embrace some of this stuff and actually make sure that it works for us, or we
yeah.
work with it rather than against it.
Yeah. Well, you saying about that just reminded me of something I was reading in a book yesterday about a lady called she won the Nobel Prize, and she's the only someone who's not got a doctorate to win a prize. Her name was Tu Yu again. Tu Yu, and she was named after a poem about a horse chewing a herb, right? That's why
Oh,
her dad
good.
named her.
Yeah.
Anyway, so years later, when in was it North Vietnam, North Korea? Anyway, Mao, a lot of the people were dying of malaria. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wanted to try and find a cure for malaria. So he set to Yu to find this cure. Anyway, and because she was a medical doctor and a Chinese medical doctor. Anyway, she found the cure, and it was in some 1600-year text, and it was a natural herb that you could use, and it worked, and we still use that base of it today to cure
Mm-hmm.
people. But this is where it gets really weird. Like, so it's nature again that had the cure for malaria that was caused by nature. But anyway, that herb that was the cure was the exact herb that in the poem the horse was chewing.
Really?
Yeah, so she was
Oh,
named
wow.
when she was born after a poem about a horse chewing a herb. Years later, she found the cure
Oh,
for malaria,
gosh.
and it turned out to be that herb that the horse was chewing.
Yeah.
But that's all nature, isn't it? But like,
Yes.
what's all that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
And
Now,
I reckon for everything that nature causes,
mm,
there's probably a natural cure for it
mm,
as well. But we got to
yes.
find it,
Yes.
remember it, and know how
Yes.
to do it.
Yeah. Yes, we have,
Yeah,
and be able to enhance it and use it appropriately.
yeah. Because
Yes.
sorry, one other thing about your son saying, I thought you knew about the this sort of thing. But there was another one about when the tsunami hit. I think it was, I don't know where it was, but it was a massive tsunami hit. But apparently the story goes that there was a nature reserve right next to the beach that was very huge, and and not one animal died in the tsunami. All the animals before the tsunami hit apparently moved a long way away
Yes.
from the sea, and not one animal died.
Yeah.
And I when I read it, that blew my mind. And I thought we've probably got that ability as well in us somewhere.
Yeah.
Sense.
Yeah.
We know when it's going to rain or when it's going to thunder. We can sense it, can't we?
Yes.
But we lost
Yeah.
that ability to sense the tsunami, but those animals hadn't. And I
Yeah.
it's because we've been distracted, or by we're always thinking about something else, or maybe we're overthinking things, whereas those animals have got a sense that we haven't, and that's
Yeah.
nature again. There's a
Yes,
connection.
it is, and so sometimes we need to follow our instincts rather than actually sort of keep trying to reprocess everything and make it fit.
Yeah, yeah. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, and it talks about trying to use our intuition and our heart a little bit more. We're great with our imagination, like Human Sapiens said, about how that's how it's changed us. but we also need perhaps a bit more balance of that as well. Too much of this maybe is not the best thing.
No,
The right
no,
balance.
no.
There's a balance, and that's nature, I guess. Nature's the balance, I would say.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that's what you think, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I do, and I think we should listen more to nature, but because we need to work with her, not against her.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we're working against her at the moment, so we need to change that. But she will win. We won't.
Yeah.
She will.
Yeah, there's only one winner. There's a really interesting video online. What would happen to the Earth if humans disappeared today, like that? And it sort of shows it. And like, and it's what the interesting part is. After a couple of years, nature's really, you know,
Yeah.
10, 15 years, nature's pretty much owning everything. The
Yeah.
buildings crumbled, the beginning to get covered, and I was just like,
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
an animation, but it's still pretty.
Mhm. Yeah.
Nature's going to win. Nature will always win.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely, it will.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's a very interesting one. I've noticed I've jabbered on about nature, which probably means I've agreed with you. Is there anything else you'd like to say about nature or Mother Nature before we move on?
No, that's it, Mark. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go. So before we move on to hear what you about your thing that you think is most amazing about Boston, I'm going to go through your choices and see if you want to change them at all. You can, but or if not. So your most amazing person. I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to say both names. Kath Walker, also known as Udagaru Nunakul.
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 Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Yeah. So most amazing person was Udagaru Nunakul. Your most amazing object, the printing press. Most amazing animal, the elephant. The most amazing quote is your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning, by Bill Gates. Yes. The most amazing book is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. And your most amazing thing ever is nature. And are you happy to stick with all of those?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Cool. And normally I try and look at a link between all of the choices to see if there's a link. And I think the thing I'd say about yours is they're all about communication, community, and connection. It's those three things that seem to stand out about your choices. The communication through the printing press, and how Udagaru did that through poetry. And then the elephant was the family and the community and the connection through those, and that was the same with the poem. There was the quote. There was an interaction there between the two people, and learning, and that connection and communication and community again, and nature pretty much sums all that up, as to and I'd say that was the thread that I would say that tied yours all together.
And actually, I hadn't realised any of that until we were talking. And I realised that some of the stuff links back to something else. So it was, yes, that was, and I didn't think of that while I was actually putting all this together. That didn't occur to me. So
no, but
what the discussion brings out as well.
Yeah, and weirdly, in the introduction, I said that you've always been involved in the community right at the beginning, and that sort of comes through. So great choices, good chats there. So this takes us on to because each week we have a guest from Boston, Lincolnshire, in the UK. We ask each guest their view on what they think is the most amazing thing about Boston.
Well, I think the most amazing thing about Boston is its history. And I think the other amazing thing about Boston is that the history has never been sold well enough for the benefit of the community. We're a very mixed community now, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. I don't have a problem with that at all. We make a lot of the Hansard and our links with other parts of the world, and King's Lynn also have that link too. But we don't make the link the other way with the Pilgrim Fathers and with America. And it brought it home to me. And my other son, my younger son, lives in Melbourne in Australia. I must have been a terrible mother. They couldn't have got further away from me.
But you get great holidays.
Yes. And somebody he met some time ago asked him where he was from, just in conversation, and he said, "Oh, from Boston." He said, "Oh, you're American?" He said, "No, I come from Boston in England. No, don't be silly. Boston's in America. And he said we nearly came to blows because this chappie would not believe there was a Boston in America, and that was their first before the Boston in Lincolnshire, and that was their first before the Boston in America. And so it really brought it home to me that actually we've never ever really sold Boston's history, and I think it's amazing that we've actually failed to do that. Yeah. And I think we're such a multicultural town now that we need to be thinking about our origins as well as what we are now, and that's not knocking any of what we're doing now, but it's we've never made the most of it. We do so much to actually build Boston and make the world more aware of it and its history.
It would be a game changer, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? If the American tourists felt that they wanted to come to Boston, it'd be a game changer. I travelled around America. When was it? 2017, and I went to Boston, Massachusetts, and I met the councillor and met the mayor and things like that. Well, just because I sort of gate crashed their council meeting mainly, but anyway, they hadn't heard of us yet. There had been a lot of work done to do that. But I was thinking if there could be some way that we could persuade the Americans to come, it would be a game changer. And I caught a train when I was in America, and I caught a train from New York to Washington. And I was talking to someone on the train, and they were calling it a local train journey because, and I was like, it's a 4-hour train journey. They're like, yeah, this is a short journey. This is local. We're 2 hours from London on a train. An American wouldn't think that's a journey at all.
No.
The challenge for us all is to try and work out what it is that can convince Americans to come here. Like I know when Boston Big Local, and I'm not saying this was a good idea in hindsight because Boston Big Local's done a lot of good, but I remember someone telling me about Boston Big Local having £1 million to spend in the town, and I was like, get a statue, just get someone to do a statue that every American will want to see. I don't know what that statue is, but if we can work out a statue that every American would want to see and stick it somewhere in Boston town centre, would that do it? That was my idea back then. But something like that. But someone goes, well, we got the stump. That should be enough. And I was like, well, maybe.
Well, no, I don't know. But when I worked for Relate many years ago, before I worked for the CVS, my boss, he was chair of the trustees, we had an idea of selling Boston to the Americans, and we thought if we could offer, people that came over to London from America, they could be offered a weekend in Lincolnshire, and they could come to Boston. It would be a bit like a coach tour for a weekend, going to all the historic places that would reflect Boston history, and we could do a hamper. So a picnic hamper, and you'd have Lincolnshire cheese, Lincolnshire sausages, pork pies, cheese, and all that sort of stuff that was very local to us. A bit like, when you go to, I don't know, anywhere abroad and you have their local, or even to Bakewell and you have Bakewell tart. So it was, and we could do something like that, but it just never sort of really got going. It was people just don't seem to want to do it. It's almost like singing your own praises, and why haven't we done that as a town? Why haven't we done that? I'm not a local, actually. I wasn't born in Boston. I was born in Northampton, so it's not as though it's my own local heritage really, but I just feel it's such a shame, just wasted opportunities.
It is the game changer if someone can unpick that puzzle of how to get the Americans to come here, and there's a lot of reasons for them to come here. We can unpick that puzzle. And maybe there needs to be a committee. maybe people need to come together and just go, how do we get Americans? And that's the only job, because to me that's a massive game changer, isn't it? It's a massive
absolutely. So that's amazing. I think about Boston is its history, and it's amazing that we haven't sold it.
Very well put. So before we come to an end, is there anything you'd like to promote?
Yes, Samaritans. We're always looking for volunteers. So like all organisations, we do have a turnover of volunteers, and also the Butterfly Hospice, if I can be greedy and have two, because it's a community facility. It's built for the community. The hospice is there for people, and it's end of life palliative care, it's respite care, so it's actually there for the local people. And we have on occasions with the people that perhaps have lived a little bit out of our area, because the family lives in Boston and it's difficult for them to travel, we may even be able to consider having people in. But it's a very local facility, and it's there for use. And we do have a bereavement service now, and we're also actually looking to develop an overnight stay facility for people that have to come. We've had a family come from quite a distance away, and they've been very supportive of us, and we did our best to be able to try and accommodate them, but we've decided that we need some proper accommodation now, so we're going to look into that as well. So promoting both of them as local resources and there for the community would be good.
Yeah, I shall pop both the links onto the website, and I'll pop a link about the Samaritans, volunteering with Samaritans as well, because if I remember right, October will be the next time that we're going to be training those.
Yes, we've got October, and we're interviewing as well through August and September. So
right, okay, so if people want to volunteer, go for it. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'll put the link for those below the video on the website and on YouTube. Okay. So that's this week's podcast. Just a reminder that if you're watching this on the r-amazing.com website, you can scroll down to the bottom and you can vote to say whether you agree with Lorraine's choices or whether you disagree, which is fine. But just there's a little box you can tick yes or no, and that's at the bottom of the page below the video on the r-amazing website. But that's it for this week. So thank you very much, Lorraine, for sharing your amazings, and we'll be back next week with a different guest. So until then, bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Mark. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.